After the holidays are over, most Americans prepare for taxes. Titan Tax is ready to make filing your taxes as stress-free as possible. This veteran-owned virtual tax office will prepare and submit your tax return safely from the comfort of your home. If you filed unemployment for the first time or wondering about home office tax deductions, Titan Tax Professional has the answer for you. Contact us today at TitanTax.com or 757-565-7781. Titan Tax, real help from real people. You're watching SKST Radio.
Well, welcome to another episode of SKST Radio. We're in Real Talk right here in Virginia Beach, and we got a special guest. She's no longer a guest. She's part of the family, Miss Shira Ali from Real Chicks. Hey, lady. How's it going?
It's going
well,
good.
Welcome. Woo! We got you again. I'm so excited. Okay, Shira, what are you going to be talking to us about today?
So today I wanted to give some more success tips to small business owners who are dealing with landlord requests. And that's one of the things where I see small business owners struggle when they're presenting those requests. So I want to go over the three major areas where I see those struggles and give you some tips on how you can navigate those successfully and get your request approved. So
okay, great. So Shira, can you give us a little bit of your background for the people who have not met you from the last episode, and that way they'll know who you are and your credentials, because you are credentialed up.
Thank you, Kimmy. You're just so flattering. Again, as Kimmy said, I'm Shira Ali with REI Chicks. So I've been in property management for 20 years. First part of my career, I was in multifamily. I did that for 8 years. And the remainder of the time I've been in commercial. So I'm a real estate investor as well. And in my business, I help those smaller business owners who are navigating property management. Either they self-manage their properties or they have a small property management business that they have started themselves. And I help them get those processes in place, set up those systems, and give them the training that they need to be successful.
Wow. Yeah. And, people, small businesses especially, I wouldn't know. And even with the work that I do, I don't know everything. And I'm still learning. And people like Shira, she helps people like me. And I'm like so grateful that God sent her my way because she's knowledgeable. And so you guys, these are tips that this lady have to offer that you can't buy. You can't pay for this wealth of information that this lady has to offer. So Shira, go ahead, take the floor, girl.
Yeah. So thank you again. And I want to tell you that you're not, like, as you mentioned, you're not going to know everything. You know your business, whatever your business is, whether you're a hairdresser, whatever business you're running, that's what you know. You don't know all of the ins and outs of property management and what you need to do. So I'm going to just give you, this is going to be very simple things you can do. Nothing here is complicated. You can do all of this yourself. It just takes you going through each step. So I have a few notes. So if you see me looking down, I don't want to miss anything. So I want to let everyone know, I'm going to reiterate from the first episode, despite what many people think, your landlord wants and needs you to be successful, right? They need you to be successful as much as you want to be successful. And a lot of people think that they have this stereotype. Have you heard that? Where people think that the landlord is, they're not supporting them. They're kind of fighting against them. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but for the most part, your landlord is there. They want you to be successful and they want to help you, right? So the majority of the requests that I see come in are related to financial. So either rent relief, rent abatement, those type of requests, and lease assignments or modifications to the property. So whether you need to make a change to the property, if you are thinking about selling your business and you want to assign your lease to someone else, those lease assignment requests. So the reason I think this is important is because today we are in very uncertain times, and you may need to do things that are outside of the box in order to have your business be successful. So the first one I'm going to start off with is related to modifications of your of the property. So if you're leasing a space and you need to make a change to that space. A lot of the changes were related to outdoor seating with the pandemic. Maybe you need to, I've had requests from small business owners that want to maybe open up their space. So maybe have like roll up doors or something like that, so they can have like indoor outdoor seating to accommodate people. What I'm going to tell you in those cases is that you first should review your lease. So take a look at what the requirements are. Most leases have standard information, such as you need to have landlord approval. So make sure that you take a look at that. It's not going to spell everything out because they can't address every situation in that lease. So just make sure that you review your lease, understand what documents you need to submit to the landlord to review. And it will also tell you how you can and how long it should take before you get a response back from the landlord. So review that first. And then the next thing is you're going to make sure and do your research. So if you have a request where you want to have, let's go with the installing outdoor seating, right? You want to make sure that the local jurisdiction and municipality is going to, what are their processes and procedures? Is that going to be allowed? In most cases today, they're extending the rules and the ability to do that. But make sure that that's something that you can do. I know that before the pandemic, there were business owners, restaurants that wanted to have outdoor seating, and there's a certain requirement that you have to have ingress and egress on sidewalks. So make sure that you're meeting those requirements. If it's a modification, like the tenant that asked about maybe having the roll-up door, how do you look at go to the local municipality and ask and figure out what the process is to have that? Is that going to be allowed before you even go and submit that request to the landlord? Because that's the first thing that they're going to ask. They're going to ask you, they're going to want to make sure that it is something that is able to be done. Is it a viable request, right? The next thing you want to do is make sure that you gather the cost for that. Are you able to, in most situations, if you're in the middle of a lease, you're not up for a renewal, and you want to ask the landlord to foot the bill for this request, that may not be the ideal time. So look at the costs. Are you going to be able to incur those costs? Are you going to ask the landlord for help? But just make sure that you have those numbers in place. You have something to go off of. And then the last thing I'm going to say is that make sure that it's a good idea. It's a good idea to have some type of concept or plan that you can present, because if it's your property, you're going to want to know, what will this look like? Some type of rendering. It doesn't have to be super complicated. It doesn't have to be very sophisticated, but to start with it, with the initial request, I think you should have some type of, give them some visual, even if it's going online and pulling a photo of someone else who has done that, so they have an idea of what this will look like. People sometimes have a hard time visualizing things like that. So that's a helpful one. And then they may require something more substantial going forward. So just be prepared for that. So were you able to hear everything?
Well, actually, with my internet, I apologize for that. No, I came in at the tail end of the last section. So, but I mean, I'm hoping that it kept going. If not, I'm gonna have to ask you to come back. We can record or something, because this is juicy stuff, and I hope we got it all.
Yeah, no, I believe it was going, it was showing. So I just kept talking.
Okay, good. Well, see, she's good at it. So Shira, so going back to the things that you were saying, what if there's opportunities for the landlord that they want, if they, on flipping the script, if they want to get rid of a tenant, and it's like their lease is still good, how do they get out of something like that?
So I couldn't hear the last part. You said something else.
Well,
You
so
said,
it's probably still my internet. I'm sorry, I apologize. So if I wanted to get rid of it and they still, the lease is still good, so just say their lease is good for 2 years and they didn't really work out the first year and I wanted to get rid of them, how would I go about doing something like that?
It depends on the reason that you want to get rid of the tenant. With all of the moratoriums and all of these things that they've put in place, it depends on why. And that's really going to be the first thing. If it's rent, a lot of those things were put on hold. And a lot of the court cases on those are backed up. I heard in New York, it's 2 to 3 years right now that to get someone, like, to get a court date. I know one landlord was just telling me that a couple of weeks ago. So
Wow.
it really depends on that specific situation. But in most cases, my personal belief is I'm going to try to work with the person as much as I can, for as long as I can, until it's just not working anymore. I don't think that's the first thing people go to is to try to, what can I do to get I just don't want to be bothered. Why? Is there a reason? Is there a fix here? If not, then you need to go through the legal procedures depending on what the issue is, whether it's non-payment, whether it's they're violating lease terms, all of that. And all of those things are handled differently. So it's not a kind of one size fits all for that type of case, unfortunately. It's
Got
not.
you. I just recently learned about the lockout situation here in Virginia. Can you explain that to me? Found out that it was against the law to lock people out just to get their attention to come pay rent. So if a
Yeah.
person that, like me, coming from a totally different state, not know that, what do you do in those cases? Is that still another legal aspect? So you're not paying me rent, you're not returning my phone calls, not returning my letters, but you can just operate and just do what you want to do.
Yeah. So yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm saying, is that normal? Is that how that works?
So I'm going to tell you I can go over two different scenarios. So multifamily, so residential, and then commercial, they're handled differently. So you can lock out in Virginia commercial tenants. You have to go through there's like they call it like self-help. When it comes to residential, you have to go through the eviction process. You cannot just lock them out. You cannot do that. So if the tenant, I suggest that if you have a tenant that is not being responsive, in any case, right, whether it's multifamily, commercial,
Mm-hmm.
go through all chains to try to reach that tenant. Make sure that you are calling them. Make sure that you are emailing them when they first filled out their application. Make sure that you get those emergency contacts. That's why it's so important. Get that information early on.
Okay.
Before you need it. They're willing to provide that information at that time. So make sure that you go through all of those avenues to try to make contact, leave letters, send certified mail. If you're not going to do it through USPS, send it, UPS.
Okay.
Go through all of those avenues first.
Okay.
Before we go there. That's what you can't just, even in either situation, you cannot just lock them out. You have to still go through the notice and default process, right? In either case, you still have to go through that. But it's best to, when you're going through that, you need to get an attorney. And no, I'm not going to say you need to get an attorney. You can do it yourself, but I suggest just to make sure that all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted, to go through an attorney to have them do that. And then even with commercial tenants, you have to put a notice on their door. Have you ever been to a space? You've ever gone to a space that had like one of those notice? They post them. They're public. You have to post it on the door to say that they're
I've
locked
seen the
out.
city do that. I've seen the city, a green thing that says, this company is closed for now, or whatever, So
Yeah.
it's like that. Okay.
Yeah. So you have to post that. But like I said, you still have to go through all of those procedures to make sure that that's done properly, because you don't want to have a tenant come back to you in court saying that they were illegally locked out, because you're gonna be liable. You're gonna have, there are fines and there are penalties involved with doing that. So it's very serious.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So then flipping back over with the tenant, what is the tenant's rights? What are their rights when it comes to, I know I'm behind, I know I owe you $10,000, but I had hardship, I had hard cases. Do I have any rights there, especially with the pandemic?
So this is what I'm going to tell you, and this is going to go feed into the thing I was going to talk about next, which is rent relief and like rent relief requests, abatements, those type of things. Okay. So if you know that you are behind, right? If you know you're behind, communicate that to the landlord. Communication is going to be key to let them know, so they know what's going on, because then you don't have those thoughts. Well, they're on the other side of the landlord thinking they're not being responsive. They're not answering my calls. They're avoiding me. Don't avoid. You're going to have to face it at some point. Whether you face it now, you face it later.
Right.
When they say you're going to pay on the front end or the back end, you're going to have to face it. So just deal with it head on, right?
Okay.
Ask, let them know what the situation is, make arrangements, and make sure you stick to them. And if something changes, let them know. You're dealing with, I rent to people. If any of my tenants has an issue, anything, they know they can contact me anytime. I'm not going to, I reply back to them. I'm open. Make sure that you have that open communication with your tenants so that they feel comfortable to come to you. And some people are still going to be embarrassed. It's a financial issue and people are, they're embarrassed about that. They don't want to say, I cannot pay my bills. That's embarrassing. But the best thing to do is to really have those conversations, be transparent. So when it comes to, if you are in a situation like that and you need rent relief assistance, the first thing I'm going to tell you to do is make sure that you go into this with the mindset that if this landlord is not able to grant this request, it does not mean that they don't want to. Maybe they can't. Maybe they cannot afford to take that financial hit. Not everybody can. And a lot of times people have that notion that the landlords are just all like money bags, and just a lot of these people, regular people. I go to work every day, just like everybody else, and this is one of their investment avenues. So just go into it with that mindset first. The one area that I see tenants make the biggest mistake here is they are not clear on what they want. They're not clear on what they want. All they know is, I'm like you said, they owe 10,000, right? They're behind. They can't pay it. They're focused on that. They don't know. Okay, they haven't taken the time to sit down and look and say, okay, what could I do, or what would I need from that landlord to help me catch up? They don't think about, if they want to rent, I just can't pay this amount, right? I can't pay this. I can't pay 1,000. What can you pay? They don't go to that next step of, this is what will help me, right? I think, have you seen that with you need to come to that landlord with your request, what you want. You're very clear on what you want. Be prepared that they're going to ask you for your financials, because in most cases they're going to ask you. This is more for commercial. Let me just make that clear. This is more for commercial tenants, your small business owners. When it comes to residential, that's a different story. But when it comes to small business owners, you're renting a space from a landlord, make sure that you are very clear on what you want. Make sure that you are very clear and you have your financials available, because they want to make sure and look at that. And that includes your sales. If you're a sales business, make sure that you have all of those things. So they may ask for your business financials, your personal financials, right? If you are a personal guarantee on that lease. Okay. The next thing they're going to ask for is going to be, and it should be, how is this going to help your business? Because there's no point in giving someone a rent reduction if you give it to them and their business will not be viable.
Right.
they're going to want to know that this, what I'm going to provide to you is going to help you. So have some type of small marketing plan, whether it's, I'm going to take this $500 and I can now invest in marketing. I can now do this to improve my business. Right?
Right. Let me ask you this. Wouldn't it be smart to take rent reduction that you receive to go back and pay your arrears?
So what you could do is, well, it's, you could say, well, that $500 that I was, typically, this is what I'm going to tell you. Typically, what landlords would do in this case, they're going to say, they may give you that rent reduction, a small rent reduction, but typically they may try to ask you to extend the lease because they don't want to lose. They may ask you to extend that lease. And you could take that money and pay that arrears. They may just take it and spread it out over a period of time. It depends. It depends on the overall financial situation. But you do want to try to make things right in that. If you owe a past due, you want to make sure that you're showing that you're going to be able to catch up on that.
Yeah. Because, it's kind of like, I'm giving you cheaper rent. And I think I've seen this in the property that I'm actually working at, where people, before I came on board, and their lease is extended, but they're still just paying the current and not the past. Even though they had a payment plan, they didn't follow through on that, even that. So it's sort of like, well, I'm giving you money to pay me. And that didn't seem, that doesn't seem right to me at all. So what are you going to do different? And then, like you said, the marketing aspect, what are you, show me, what are you going to do differently to catch up on your arrears? Because now I've given you a rent reduction. The money that you still owe is still there. You might be current moving forward from the past. So I need resolution on that. So I don't know. I mean, at that point, do you point out to them their business plan is just not good, or do you just kind of let them figure it out? Do you give them type of advice?
Yeah, so most times they're going to, the landlord is going to review that business plan and make sure that it makes sense. And they may question things on there and say, okay, well, how is this? Show me how this, and this is going to make sure it turn around revenue for you. Do they give them advice on how to run their business? Sometimes they say, hey, have you tried this? Have you, for restaurants before the pandemic, a lot of them weren't doing takeout, but they wanted a rent reduction. Hey, have you thought about doing takeout in your restaurant? A lot, small things like that. Are you working? I had a shopping center in Maryland that, the tenants there were so cohesive. Like, they would all get together and do different like marketing activities within just right there. So there was a massage place, and the massage place may buy wine from the winery over here, and they would all like do marketing business, cross marketing, right? And those type of things. So you want to show that the landlord they're gonna dig into it, and sometimes they may have, short version is they may have suggestions to help you. Some shopping centers have marketing plans, like where we do this. Our company does this. They have a marketing department where they go into shopping centers. They help them put on events to drive traffic to the shopping centers, and they have Facebook pages for them, and they help them market in that way. Town Center in Virginia Beach, they have the cards. If you work in Town Center, you have like a little discount card that you can use. So the landlords sometimes do help and do that. On a grander scale, but they may provide one-on-one suggestions also, because they deal with so many of those business types. You're a restaurant, one restaurant in many in their portfolio for the most part. So they may have suggestions for you.
Yeah, that's good. That's pretty good. So what else could a tenant, as I guess a property manager, for a living quarters of probably like a duplex or something like that. If they're ready to fold and they have tenants, and I'm thinking this because I have a friend in Kansas City. They had a
Mm-hmm.
duplex,
Mm-hmm.
and the tenant was just not a good tenant. They had
Mm-hmm.
one that was a good tenant, and they had one that was not a good tenant. And that one that was not a good tenant always took advantage of the situation. And so I know that they really, really wanted to get rid of that tenant, and it was so hard due to the pandemic. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and so they're stuck. You feel stuck, you feel helpless, and it's like, this is my property, but I can't control my property. Any suggestions for people like that?
It depends. So do you know like specifics when you say not a good tenant? What did that mean? Were they not
Well,
paying?
that
Were they
means the tenant, had wild parties, um,
Mhm.
tear up the property all the time. It's constantly tearing up the property, not paying rent. If they do pay rent, they have to pay the rent. You know what I mean? And so the tenant is just, to me, just not a good tenant. It's not even a good neighbor at this point. Because it's like, keep your portion of the lawn up. They just were not good tenants, and you're stuck with it. And it's just like, and this being an older couple who owned the property, they felt useless. But again, this is in Missouri too, so maybe the laws might be different. But what type of advice could you give to someone like that?
Okay, this is a good one. The first thing I'm going to tell you is I know that they're in that situation now, but to prevent that in the future, let's just go back there. The screening process is going to be your best defense. When
Okay.
you're screening before you let a tenant in. I have very long-term tenants that take care of the property, and it's because I screen well. I am like,
Okay.
I screen very well. My agent that I use to purchase my properties calls me to ask me screening questions. He does. I screen tenants extremely well. When it comes to, when you're working for a company, you have rules and things that you follow. You don't make those final decisions, right? Landlords
Right.
do. You are the landlord. You have control over that screening process. Make sure that you're not violating any landlord tenant laws, fair housing laws, but you have the right to set up your screening criteria. That is going to be key. This is not the first time that people like that have behaved like that, unless they're just
Mhm.
moving out of their parents' home. And if they're adults, they've lived someplace else, they have rental references. So make sure that you are going through the screening process. And that's what I help people in my business do. Set up those processes so they know what to do, how to do it, and they don't get stuck in those nightmare tenants. The second thing I'm going to tell you to do is, if they're already in there now, make sure that you are documenting the situation
Okay.
constantly. Anytime they have noise violations, you're sending them the proper notice per the lease. Make sure that you are, and make sure you're following up. If it's a housekeeping issue, um, make sure that you're doing regular inspections, you're documenting it, you're sending notices, you're following up. People just they don't they's like, oh, this is just a bad situation. Okay, you go per the lease, send them the notice, go back, do the inspection. Have they done it? Does your lease allow that you do it? You bill them. You do
That
all
was
of those
about
things.
that. Got to make sure that's in that lease.
Yeah, make
Yeah,
sure that you do all
most
of those
definitely.
things, follow it, document it, and continue to do it. I know that sometimes that can be a hassle, but this making sure you get the right person in will help alleviate that. But to go through that process, and then if all else fails and you have to go through the legal court process to get them evicted, that's what you have to do. But make sure that you have all of that proof showing I've inspected, I have photos, here are all the notices I sent them. They were still in violation. And then you go through that legal process. But that's the trouble. A lot of people, they don't really know. They struggle with that screening. And I'm working on putting together some like a screening guide that will help
Oh, that
people,
would be good.
yeah, know what they need to do, questions they should ask, how they should go through that so they can avoid that. Yeah, I know some people
Great.
have to those people have to live somewhere. But
Right. Right.
people have to live somewhere. So, but they just won't be in your property.
So have you ever thought about, you might have already have this, but REI might be good with like a little manual, just something you can publish, a little published manual to help small businesses and property managers to just a hand guide. You ever thought about putting something like that in public?
So I haven't. I'm looking at some point to do like a course that they can kind of go through. So if you don't work with me one to one, that you have a course that you can go through, and I can give you all of these things probably in video form. And then I'm like talking out my plan, but
No, it's good.
and then have some type of group maybe where we like you go through the course, and then we can kind of meet either maybe once a week or every other week, and we can kind of, if you have specific questions that are not answered there, that we can kind of talk through it and that type of thing, because it's very helpful. I see this at UC. You have a friend that's dealing with it. It's rampant. Like it's such a big problem, and it's how do we solve that?
Right.
And,
Right.
it's not, when you're in it, it's tough.
Yeah. Well, in my complex, we had a lady, she's gone now, thank God. But we had a lady that she constantly had traffic in and out of the apartment complex, and the walls are like paper thin. So you can hear everything. I can hear the lady snoring downstairs, and it's like she's like, her wall is next to mine, but she's actually underneath me. I can hear her snoring. That's how thin the walls are. So to have a tenant on the other side of the unit, loud noise, slamming of the doors all through the night, just traffic coming in and out, in and out, in and out. We would constantly text the landlord to let him know that this activity is going on. And then for some reason, she and the lady upstairs above her, they were all getting into it, always getting into it. And it was because, again, I could hear my lady snoring downstairs. Can you imagine what the lady at the top was hearing from downstairs on her side? And so it was hard. So finally, the lady left, but I don't think she left because the landlord put her out. But I do know that the landlord didn't really want to address the situation because it was so hard to address.
That's a tough one. And with what we do, I'm gonna say this. I like people for the most part. I like people more than I don't like people, but sometimes I have to have difficult conversations. That's what I mean. Conversations.
Not situations. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to have difficult conversations. You can be a kind person. But you have to deal with, if you're a landlord that self-manages, whether you self-manage or not, if you're in business, you're going to have difficult conversations.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's best to address it head on, because then would you prefer that one bad apple stay, or you lose all of your other good tenants because that person, you're allowing them to run around and do whatever they want to do? That person you have to address that person. They are the bad apple in that situation. You need to address it.
Right.
You have to have the conversation. It doesn't have to be nasty. People think you have to tell them. You don't have to speak to them nasty. You don't have to tell. I start off with the conversation first. Hey, what's going on? I'm hearing this. Start off with that conversation. Then if it doesn't, then you're gonna document still that, hey, I had this conversation, whatever the case is, right? You're gonna document it. Then you're going to follow up again. If it continues, you're going to send, now it's going to get more formal. Now it's the letter. And now, you're going to go through the process. If it's, then, it's 2130, you have to address this within this time, or this is what we're going to have to do. So you have to do it. You have to do it. There's no way that you can operate in business and not have a difficult conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what you have to do. So I'm glad that the person moved, right? They moved out.
I mean, because the community is way better now. It's like that girl, she was just disruptive, and it's so funny because on the neighbor that was not really hearing it, because I'm never home, I'm just, I'm never home. So to hear this stuff from the neighbors, it's kind of like, wow, really? Did I miss that? And so and then when you see the other person, you know what they did, but you can't really say anything because you weren't even there. And so it was sort of hard to believe that the lady was doing all this. And then finally I saw it for myself. And it was just mind blowing how, honestly, the lady upstairs, she was gone to work and her two boys were in. And I guess they got too loud, two teenage boys. I guess they got too loud because, again, the walls are paper thin. And, you can hear just like they're next, like they're right here. And the lady downstairs went upstairs, banged on the door, and I heard it, and I heard her screaming, swearing at the kids.
Mm.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, these are children swearing at, and the mother's not there because her car's not there. And so I called the lady and I'm like, hey, you need to call your boys and find out what's going on at your apartment because clearly the neighbor's about to knock your door down. It was that bad. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is what those people have been going through the whole time. And I finally had a chance to see it. And I think it was the holidays when I was actually at home, And so I would not want a tenant like that. I would not want a tenant that was that bad. I mean, if she would have gotten in, she probably did something to this person, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So, and I think they took it into their own hands, I'm going to say, because the landlord wasn't addressing it, because they probably started reporting it. They weren't getting any response. So then they felt like they had to do it. I never make sure that as landlords, make sure that you're addressing these things. I don't, if I have to address something, I don't let the other person know. I don't tell who told me, because you don't want to create that bad blood between people. So you keep that really, keep them anonymous. And you do your own research. If
right.
this person is saying they're doing this, you go there and look and see. So you're seeing it for yourself. And you could take the, hey, this is what I saw. And can you tell me about
exactly.
this? You address it. But make sure that you're addressing it so you don't have tenants should not be interacting with others. Even I live in an association here. I had some issues with the way my neighbors were doing things. And I called the office because I know, I called them, they address it. I should not go to them and have this conversation because you want to just keep yourself removed. I don't recommend you do that. But I guess at that point where you feel like your hands are tied, nobody's helping you, that's what they felt they had to do,
Yeah. It was a scary situation. I thought, man, this lady's going to kill these kids or something. It was bad. I mean, literally bad.
It's not safe. And then you going after someone's children. I'm a mom, and don't mess with my daughter. Like that's where Shira changes to a different person.
Right.
Because you don't mess with people's kids.
Yeah.
That's one thing you cannot do. If you have a problem, you talk to me as her mom, but you don't. I always, and anytime my daughter had an issue, we're getting off of, but anytime my daughter had an issue, I went to the parent. I didn't go to the child. I went to the parent to have them. That's who I need to talk to. If my daughter's having a conversation, she's talking to the child. I'm talking to the parent. I'm not talking to the child.
Yeah. I mean, it can get crazy out here. I mean, I kid you not. It can get crazy. Things snowball, and it's just, just sort of the way it is. But going back to our topic here, do you have any more tips you want to offer us at this time?
The last one, lease assignments. The number one thing I see people do is they have a business, they're struggling. Let's go back to that, right? Or something is not going right, whatever it is. They don't want to run that business anymore. They want to sell the business. They sell the business and they go on about their business, go about their merry way. What they didn't do was they did not go through the proper procedure to assign that lease. So whether it's residential, right, you need to make sure you go through the proper procedure. Commercial, if you sell your business, you need to go through the proper procedure. Review your lease to see what the lease says. Does it allow assignments? For the most part, they do. Is there an assignment fee? Sometimes there is. So take a look at that. Make sure that you are bringing the landlord in on the process early so that they have the opportunity to screen that person and get them approved before you sell the business, because you selling the business does not remove your responsibilities per that lease. You still have that lease. So if that person does not pay, you're getting the notice. They don't know who that new person is. Like, oh, I
Right.
sold the business. That's not my issue. You are legally bound by this lease. So make sure you're doing that. Make sure that you are making sure that you understand that you can possibly still be held as a guarantor on that lease. And I've seen that. I've seen where the landlord will require the first tenant to remain on that lease for a year because they don't know this new operator. So they want to kind of see how things go. So they want to make sure they have, I'd rather have 4 people on the hook than just these new 2 people. So they're going to keep everyone on the hook. So they can go after any of those people if someone doesn't pay. So be prepared for that as well. But just make sure that you are keeping the landlord in the loop. Never sell your business before you get the approval, because if the landlord does not approve that person, you're still on the hook.
Yeah. And that's kind of crazy too, because at this point, they probably will have to close down, right? If that person can't come into the property, right?
If that person cannot, they have to find someone else. But if they've sold the business to them, that's you put yourself in a sticky situation there.
Yeah.
If you put yourself in a sticky situation, so never do that. And people forget that step. They feel like that is, yes, it is your business, but that is the landlord's property. Make sure you do that. I've seen that so many times. I go in and I go to talk to someone. They're like, oh, she's not here anymore. I bought the business. And I'm like, oh gosh, no.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I've done a couple of times, and recently it just didn't work out with the new person. The old person, well, I guess it didn't work out, period, with the old person either. The reason why he sold it. But yeah, going through that right now, I think the thing that saved the old person was the new person, was on lease, with they provided their information, and so they ended up signing the lease as being responsible for, personal guarantor on all the things that's on the lease. But at the end of the day, it was pretty interesting there at one point,
Yeah.
So
it's a mess.
Just
never do that. Even if you never do that. Never do that.
So and it can happen quick, you get in there, you're thinking it's, how people say everything's glitter and gold. You get in there and you're thinking, oh, I can do this, and then you realize you don't have the proper skills to make it happen. So
yeah. Yep. So, and those are things that landlords evaluate when they're also going to give a more, for the most part, more sophisticated landlords are looking at that. They're looking at your ability to run. Do you have experience running this? But all of these things, they play into the head because, like I said early on, they need you to be successful so they can be successful. And if they don't feel like you're going to be able to pay them, that's going to be an issue. So,
right. Well, Ms. Shira, I have to ask you something on the spot. Can we expect you back next month, the same time? More tips?
What do you want? I will do it. Tell me what you want me to cover, and I will do it.
All right, perfect. Well, we'll talk about that over the week. Okay, guys, this is going to be the end of our show for today, and we'll get Ms. Shira back next month.
Yeah. Tell me what you
see how I put her on the spot in front of America.
Yeah, if you have questions, or if people have questions and they have a specific situation that I can help out with, definitely. And I know you also have my contact information in the show notes, I believe, right?
Yes. So and also, you go ahead and tell people how to get in contact with you. And if they're interested in learning some more of these tips or taking a class, let people know how to get in contact with you.
Yeah, so you can email me, Shira, so SHIRA at REIChicks, so REICHICS. You can visit my website, reichicks.com. You can follow me on Instagram. I'm trying to grow my Instagram now, so it's REIChicks. So follow me. Cammie, I need to follow you on Instagram too.
Okay,
so yeah. So I'm working on trying to build up that following there. So yeah, that's how you could reach me. And I will respond to you personally and try to help you out as much as I can.
Yeah, and if anyone needs, can't remember the REI chicks thing, please contact me and I will put you in contact with Miss Shira. She is like the best. I've been saying it since I met her. She knows her stuff. I mean, like I said, you can't pay for this knowledge that this lady has. So please, please, it's here for you. She's giving it to you for free. Hey, do what you need to do. Please contact this lady. She's good. She's just good. And if you have questions, I mean, she's done it enough. Like I said, she has the credentials and she knows what she's talking about. So, Shira, thank you again for being on the show. This was great. This is great. I apologize again for my internet. The building just does not have internet, so everyone uses their Wi-Fi. And I bought this little Wi-Fi thing, and it's apparently not working right. So.
It's tough. That's tough. You need internet is such a
Yeah,
part
yeah.
of our lives now. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, so it makes it hard. I like my little spot, but it just doesn't come packed with internet. So, but anyway, guys, we love you. We'll see you next week on SKST Radio. Miss Shira, thanks so much for being on the show, and we'll see you next month.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Bye.
Bye.